And here we are on a Friday night, and everything is working tonight, so I'm a happy camper. Joe Chaffee and Joe Rayo, or if you prefer, Joe Rayo and Joe Chaffee. Either way, we've got to figure out a way for you to be able to do that with the volume down.
Some nights it comes up already muted, and other nights it just comes up and away it goes.
All right, let's start this again. Uh, Joe Rayo, Joe Chaffee, Joe Chaffee, or Joe Rayo, if you prefer. Either way, it's the Joe and Joe Weather Show on a night ahead of a weekend. Now, I think about this because I've been trying to remember, and of course, I have my memory is shot anyway. All right, now you're trying to make me seasick. You're waving your camera back and forth. Cut it out already. So we have tomorrow two tropical storms, Hanna and Gonzalo. Although Gonzalo looks pretty disheveled, I'm just wondering what's going to be left by the time it gets to the Windward Islands. But they're going to be making landfall at about the same time. And we have Hurricane Douglas, which is going to make landfall less than 18 hours, or come very close to making maybe a landfall in Hawaii about 18 hours later. I mean, that's three systems within 24 hours making landfalls. It's been a lot. It's been quite a while. I don't know. Have we ever seen that? You and I?
I could remember three storms occurring at the same time, but
Oh,
three
and
landfalling
and
storms.
even
No,
four.
yeah,
There's been a
right,
rare occasion of five,
right.
and that's not counting the Pacific. But to have them all landfalling at the same time is pretty remarkable. But then again, it's 2020, so if there was ever a year that you would have three landfalling storms all within within a 24-hour time frame, this is the year it's going to happen.
Hannah is the earliest number eight storm since Harvey, which
In
formed on
2005, Harvey, by the way.
August 3rd. Yes, the 2005 Harvey, August 3rd for that storm. So it's looking more and more, Joe, like we're going to need more names this year.
Well,
It's
we
it's
beat
incredible.
we beat that, by the way, by almost 9 days because
Yeah,
Harvey was on August 2nd. Today is July 24th, so it was upgraded last night, I believe, at 11 o'clock. So a good 9 days. Now I wonder if we get the I. We may have the ice storm with this. There's a pretty healthy looking tropical wave that moved off the African coast. If the European model is correct, we may have the ice storm here by the middle part of next week. So we might have the earliest ninth named storm that we've ever had,
right.
and
Well,
and
we're
and we
way ahead
still
of
haven't.
schedule.
And we still none of them have been hurricanes either. They've all been tropical storms.
Right.
So let's start with tropical storm Hannah, because one of the things that is slightly, well, it's a little bothersome to me right now is the fact that Hannah is strengthening. It's been a kind of very methodical strengthening trend that's occurring. Has been since this thing has gotten organized. Now only top winds are up to 50 miles an hour, but the Hurricane Center now is betting on the possibility that this could become a minimal hurricane right before it makes landfall. And I always get a little bit leery with respect to storms that are in the strengthening process while they're making landfall, because it's in situations like that that you can often have some strange outcomes in terms of unusually strong winds, for gusty winds, for example. Uh, Whenever you get something that's in the developing phase and you catch it while it's strengthening, that's usually rough. It's rough when they're coming in and they're weakening, but it's oftentimes rougher when they're coming in and they're strengthening. Much like
Right.
thunderstorms, when you catch them when they're developing, that's when they're at their strongest.
Right. And with this particular system, you're right. With increasing development as it makes landfall, there could be some convection. There could be some tornadic outbreaks right along the coast. Your old town, Corpus Christi, looks like it's not quite in the middle of the eye wall, but will be very close when it does make landfall again, probably tomorrow, right?
Well, yeah, around midday, and the way the structure, looking at the structure of the storm, it looks to me like the areas along and south of the storm track may wind up getting more out of this than the areas up to the north. But we'll check all that out. We'll start off with we'll get the satellite going here. I'm going to try to get a very good shot of this. I've got a single shot, so I'll freshen that up, and we'll bring it up full screen for everybody. But I mean, you look at this, Joe. The northeastern part of this is open, but I'm sorry, the northwestern semicircle remains open, but the northeast and also to the south and southwest it seems to be well developed, and you can look closely. There's this bright white core there that is near where the center is, a little less than 200 miles east of Corpus Christi. I think that I think there is this could certainly get to 60 or 65 miles an hour, and again, it might even make minimal hurricane before it makes landfall.
So now, what we were talking about this before the tropical storm season even began. In the current situation with the COVID-19 and quarantining or whatever. So what happens if this makes will make landfall tomorrow to such a degree that people are going to be forced to leave their homes? Where do they go?
You know what? That's a good question. I don't know. This might have been a good time to get Addison on, but he's busy, so I wasn't able to get a hold of him. Addison Green, who works in Corpus Christi, and you've seen him here on our show from time to time. I'm sorry, he works in Houston. I worked in Corpus Christi. In fact, one of my friends, Alan Casper, called me up because he actually came down to Corpus Christi to visit me back in 1982. And I did the quick math for him and pointed out to him that it was 38 years ago. It's like half a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
Nice little city by the sea there in South Texas. And of course, Padre Island, that's a big place for the college folk to go to on spring break. But the circulation of this covers the Gulf of Mexico. You put it in perspective here with regards to the full U.S. loop. I'm going to try and get to a Gulf loop here. And this way we can get a close-up shot. And then I've got the radar that we can take a look at as well. Gulf of Mexico storms are actually, from a meteorological standpoint, I always found to be quite interesting. Just the fact that they just seem to, when they start out in there and then they start to slowly develop, and every couple of hours it looks a little better organized, and it reminded me of one particular one back in 1977 was Hurricane Anita. And the A storm in that hurricane season, which I believe only had 5 named storms, that A storm came in early September, and it started in the Eastern Gulf just like this one did, but it started in the Eastern Gulf of Mexico, right along 25 degrees north. It was moving west at about 5 or 6 miles an hour. Started as a tropical depression. And every advisory that came out, it was 5 miles. They kept upping the winds by increments of 5. And it moved straight across the Gulf along 25 north. By the time it got to Brownsville, the central pressure was down to 924 millibars. It was briefly a Category 5 hurricane. And at the last minute, it veered south and went in south of Brownsville into the north coast of Mexico, which is where the area is sparsely populated. So the impact from that respect was rather minimal for a Category 5 storm. But here's a close up on the loop, and you can just see how there's you see the evidence of the core. You see some fairly impressive bands beginning to develop out in the Gulf and just kind of wrapping itself around. There it goes. Yeah, I mean, it really does look like there's no shearing. There's no shear. The Gulf water temperatures are in the mid to upper 80s. There's nothing that really stops this from getting maybe just at the very end, maybe getting to hurricane strength.
I remember it was the day before landfall of Katrina, and it was supposed to be at a certain strength or whatever like that. Went to bed, woke up the next morning, and the damn thing was like 40 mile per hour stronger than it was when I went to bed the previous night. And when you got a storm in the Gulf of Mexico, sometimes you just don't know. This thing, obviously, the Hurricane Center feels now could reach Category 1, but who's to say it may even surpass that before it makes landfall?
One of
These,
the
these we have a fairly good uh, record in recent years of being able to forecast the track and speed of these things. The one thing that always befuddles, I think, these forecasters is trying to determine the strength or the intensity of these, even in a short term. So this is going to be something to watch, perhaps, for the next 12 to 24 hours.
Well, you jarred a memory in my head because in Corpus Christi, up until Hurricane Harvey, now Harvey went in north of Corpus Christi and it did a tremendous amount of damage from the standpoint of wind. But the storm that was the signature storm for that area, and what I mean by signature storms are the ones that the local residents will tell you about, that stands in their memories. Here it would be Sandy. On the Gulf Coast, it would be Camille if you're in Biloxi. For New Orleans, it used to be Betsy, and then of course that was supplanted by Katrina. For Florida, for South Florida, it's Hurricane Andrew. For North Florida and the Panhandle, it might be Hurricane Michael from a couple of years ago. For Corpus Christi, it was Celia, and Celia strengthened at the last minute. Right as it came onto the coast, literally when it got within about 100 miles of the coast, it just blew up. The ocean water temperatures there were up close to 90. This was, I believe, Celia was a late August, early September storm. I have to look back. But that one produced, they had wind gusts from that storm of 130, 140 miles an hour, tremendous amount of wind damage that was caused by Celia. So that now, of course, Harvey is the most recent experience. So that's why I said at the very beginning, you just want to be a little bit cautious. If you're in the south coast of Texas, I would pay attention to this just in case that something bizarre winds up happening at the last minute. But again, very impressive. And on the radar, which if I have to find what I did with it on my board here, I've got so much stuff working. But here's the look on the radar, and you're starting to see the first bands. Doesn't look overly impressive now, of course, but you're starting to see the first bands of rain coming in to South Texas. There are some heavy showers along the coast of southern Louisiana, but you notice that everything is going east to west from along the northern Gulf Coast, and then moving more north to south along the South Texas coast. So you can just begin to see the western edge of the core of the circulation is just on the edge of the radar range out in the Gulf.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. Are they? They're doing. Obviously, they are. They must be doing intermediate advisories then for this, right?
No, they've been
They'll
doing
have
that
them.
since yesterday when they put the tropical storm, the stop tropical
But
storm
what time?
watches warnings up
And they're
and
doing that.
watches.
And they're doing that for I guess 7 p.m. Central and 8 p.m. our time, right? Is that correct?
The next advisories will be out in less than 45 minutes.
Okay. All right.
I'm just going to let's go up one radar to the Houston Galveston radar as of 7:16 p.m. Of course, folks, if you're watching this overnight on a replay, this is it's 7:16 Eastern time on Friday night. So go ahead and watch the show, and then go to weather.gov and go to nhc.noaa.gov for the National Hurricane Center, so you can make sure you have the latest weather information. And you see some bands there working their way southwestward from west of Houston and up and near Victoria, and then continuing southward from there. So nothing crazy going on at the moment from the standpoint of rain. That's going to come tomorrow as the storm moves on shore.
Right. Right. And now we move on to in terms of importance to the United States, I would have gone with this one, not Gonzalo, with Hanna, getting mixed up now with all these names.
Yes.
Now we should move on to the storm that's affecting the Pacific.
We'll go to Hawaii next. Let me just finish up a couple of
Douglas.
Let me just finish up a couple of things. I brought up this map shows the probability of tropical storm force winds. So basically gales, and I have this time set for 8 o'clock tomorrow evening. I'm going to just go back it up a couple of frames to well, let's say this would be at 8 a.m. So gales aren't even on the coast at 8 a.m. By 2 p.m., they have probably the gales on the coastline, and then by 8 p.m. you can see this wide area of gales. And just at least for now, top winds are as it keeps strengthening, they added a probability of 50 knot winds here, and you're seeing probabilities full of they're not really all that high at this point, but this is a forecast from earlier today. So I would suspect that these numbers have probably been raised now that the Hurricane Center at 5 o'clock up the winds and in their forecast and bringing it to minimal hurricane. And of course, rainfall is probably going to be the biggest deal overall. So I'll put the total rainfall here that is forecast. And again, the heaviest rain is likely to be as you go south of where the center makes landfall. So producing some 5 to 10 inch rainfall amounts across much of South Texas. Excuse me, Corpus Christi, 5 3/4 inches being forecast. You start to move up the coast, and you see the amounts do go down, but still 2 to 2.5 inches in and around Houston and Galveston, back to Port Arthur and Beaumont, and along the Louisiana coastline, because they're getting some bands of rain now, as much as 3 to 4 inches being forecast of total rain out of this. So this is definitely going to be the rain is going to be the bigger deal, and the fact that it keeps moving is a good thing because then we won't have a Harvey situation where it winds up raining nonstop for three
Oh,
days
no.
and somebody gets 55 inches of rain or something.
Right, right. Which was the last thing those people need down there. But yeah, it's a progressive system. Well, churning at a pretty good speed right now, and it will only, he said, only looks like it'll dump 5, 6, 7 inches as opposed to the, as you just mentioned, 55 that Harvey got. I
Right.
can't even imagine 55. 55 inches is even more rain than we get here in New York in a single year. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. Now, let's go to Douglas. So, Douglas, which was a major hurricane, this is the latest satellite that I just pulled up a couple of minutes ago. You can still see the eye, although the eye has become cloud filled as the day has worn on. So, it's probably starting to encounter slightly cooler ocean water as it moves on its west northwest course, but it still remains very well defined on the satellite shot that I got, and see if we can pull up a loop here. I will hopefully be successful. Sorry, I got a little something going on, a little frog in my throat there. Uh, let's back this up. By the way, this is the fourth latest for a hurricane in the Eastern Pacific Basin. The fourth latest.
We were beginning to wonder when they were going to finally have a hurricane,
Yeah.
and they finally have.
So
Wow.
we've been saying how unusually quiet it is. I think that stat makes that explains it, being that this is the fourth latest that we've ever had a hurricane in the East Pacific. But you see on the loop, the eye still, it's still defined, but again, getting a bit cloud filled as it marches along on a west northwest course. If you notice up to the north, the clouds are moving east to west. That's the base of the upper ridge that is steering this westward. And there's no sign, by the way, if you look to the west on the west side of this, everything is still moving east to west. There's no sign of any kind of trough at all that is going to nudge this or turn it to the northwest or north northwest so that it can bypass the islands. It's going to be really, really close in terms of whether it skims the north coasts of the islands or it goes right over the islands or maybe passes just south of the islands. This is a very, very dicey situation here with regards to the track because we literally are talking about a handful of miles here.
And it's so surprising that we're seeing a storm that had its evolution just off of Baja, California, actually making it all the way to the Hawaiian Islands, which really, Joe, doesn't happen. Usually a storm off of Baja that moves on a westerly course tends to run into a lot of cool water and tends to diminish rapidly and just completely dissipates before it has any real effect on the islands. So we've been saying normally Hawaii gets affected by storms that develop in the central Pacific and move up to the north toward them. But this is
Well, what saved this was that where it started out, instead of moving northwestward, because it was somewhere north of 15 degrees north, it actually on the initial disturbance moved southwestward and got south of 15 north where the water's pretty warm, and then it turned west. Didn't really become a tropical storm until it was at about 130 degrees west. I mean, so it was way out already. But a lot of the storms that go to Hawaii, they oftentimes start down around 10 north, and then they just kind of plot along west northwest, and then when they get there, they usually tend to weaken. And we're thinking that the same thing will happen to this one. At least that's the plan, because of the fact that the ocean water temperatures are a bit cooler, and there's also some drier air that's on the west as well that might get entrained into the circulation. But uh, it's a weird year so far. So weird things are happening no matter what no matter what.
And it's going to be, as you just pointed out a few moments ago, Joe, a very tight situation. But whether or not the eye of the storm or the center of this storm passes directly over any one of the islands, or whether or not it misses, Hawaii is in for a very rough day on Sunday, in terms of showery rains, strong gusty winds. It's not going to be a devastating storm like, let's say, Iniki was back in 1992, which devastated the island of Kauai, but it's still going to be a nasty day. And for all those people who, have their vacations, their Hawaiian vacations
Well,
this
where they
weekend.
can go there and be quarantined for 14 days.
Well, Hawaii is
Is not a bad place to be quarantined.
it's not a bad place to be quarantined, but usually Hawaii, 90% of the time, July is the best month, the high month, the month where you always get nice weather and sunshine. This is one of those years where they're getting the other 10%, it looks like.
The Hurricane Center forecast track, and this is coming from the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, 11 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time. Um, Advisory 17 north, 143.5 west, top winds 115. So it's you're going to see that number come down, moving west northwest at 18. They still have it as a minimal hurricane, 8 a.m. Sunday morning, just north of the Big Island, and then they move it directly over the islands to the west. So hurricane warnings are already up for the Big Island of. I'm sorry, hurricane watches are up. Let me take that back. Hurricane watches are up for the Big Island of Hawaii, for Oahu, Molokai, and Kilauea.
And Maui, right? Maui too.
And Maui,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And that includes the city of Honolulu, land of Goshen. So there's your forecast track, and then it weakens to a tropical storm, and then it just keeps on going, and then gets to the almost to the international date line. Whether it holds together once it goes past 175 west. Johnston Island is out there. Every once in a while, they'll get a hurricane that'll go through there, and then it'll just keep on going. I neglected, by the way, I want to bring up Hanna's forecast track, and then we can go to Gonzalo. But Hanna's forecast track, the Hurricane Center hasn't really changed the actual track, but what it did do on its latest forecast, which was put out at 5 o'clock Eastern time, was add a hurricane warning from Mesquite, Texas to Baffin Bay, and tropical storm warnings are up from either side. So from on either side. So the warning is just just north of Corpus Christi, and runs up the coast, that very, very short, small area that you see there. And the warnings extend up to, but not quite, to Galveston. And then they go all the way south to the mouth of the Rio Grande River near the Texas-Mexico border. And you can see the track here bending to the west and then west-southwest after it moves inland and heads into Mexico, where it'll go into the mountains and rain itself out. At least that is the plan, according to the National Hurricane Center. Now we can go to Gonzalo, which on its satellite is a
By the
horror
way,
show.
I think we discussed this a long, long time ago. If Douglas makes it all still is intact and makes it all the way to the date line and continues into the Western Pacific, does it maintain its name Douglas, or
No,
does it?
I think they the other her the it gets a name change on the other side
Mhm.
it goes along. Now,
And it becomes a typhoon, or is that
well,
is
if it's a hurricane, yes,
yeah?
it'll be a spittoon.
Okay, we'll see.
Okay, so um, looking at this loop, I'm gonna try. Let me see if I can get a better shot of this. Okay, storms. Let's get a better shot of this because it's looking awfully ragged. Uh, all storm views. Uh, that's the floater. Here we go. That's the one I wanted. Okay, so we've been talking. This is what happens with small storms. They are quite volatile, and they can go either way in terms of strengthening. But if
You,
you look at the loop here, you have not a whole lot going on. There's this just central ball of convection that is sitting right along 10 north. Look how small it is. If you look on the upper left, you can see the big island, the Trinidad Tobago. It barely covers those two islands here on the southern end of the Windwards. That's how small this thing is. And
Joe, this is nothing. This storm to me looks like nothing more than a, a, a gratified level 6 thunderstorm.
the heavy rain and thunderstorms they had in South Jersey today look more impressive than this
Right,
thing does.
right.
And one of the things that the Hurricane Center found, the recon that flew into this afternoon, was that it was not only it was disorganized, it found multiple centers. The convection was very ragged and all over the place. Unlike about 36 hours ago when it was in its formative stage and it looked there that it actually looked pretty well organized back about 36 hours ago. But
Right.
again, it's weakening, and as it weakens, it's now responding to the faster trade winds at the lower atmosphere. So this thing is moving right along. And by the way, if you look at the loop closely, the two things it jumps because what this shot does is it holds it keeps the storm near the center, so it's the geography that shifts. So it looks like it's doing weird movements. It actually isn't. It's the floater imagery because the floater imagery moves with the storm. But you notice if you look carefully at how these clouds, how some of them are getting blown away off to the northeast and to the north. The low level clouds are moving east to west. I, I wouldn't be surprised if it winds up degenerating into an open wave before it moves over the islands tomorrow around midday. Again, around the same time that Hannah will be making landfall in Texas.
That's just Trinidad, Tobago, Grenada. Those are the best chances of seeing something out of this.
Correct.
And really nothing more than some squally rains and maybe some gusty winds or whatever. Again, a glorified heavy duty thunderstorm, but
Right.
it doesn't look like it's really all that much worse than that.
And here's the track from the Hurricane Center west north. Uh, Eventually, the idea is that it's going to turn west northwest. It hasn't done it yet, but it gets into the in the southern Caribbean, the southeastern Caribbean. They hold it as a tropical storm through Sunday. I have my doubts about that, and then eventually weakens it to a depression, and then and after that probably a remnant low. I think that may wind up happening faster than advertised, but we'll of course just watch it and let it evolve. We'll let it tell the story, and we'll see what happens. Top winds now again only down to 40 miles an hour. Just want to check, Joe. It's coming up on 7:32 Eastern time. Let's just see if there's any reconnaissance aircraft out there. All right, we have NOAA Mission 5 is now en route to Hanna. And we have Mission 2 into Gonzalo. And it's just now, let's see, funny because I'm looking here at the winds. Uh, the winds are as the storm is flying down from 12 degrees north and 57 and a half west. So the plane is still not quite there yet. It had some flew into some winds of 34 to 40 knots. That's not even close to where the center is. But now since then, it's basically flying in through winds of about 20 knots, 25 knots, as it and again, it still has to go a bit of a ways before it gets to where the storm is. And you folks at home can go to tropicaltidbits.com, and I have the website up here right now. If you click on aircraft recon, you can take a look at that. If you go to current storms, you can see some of the hurricane tracking model guidance that is used, and other maps, including the ensembles and the intensity guidance. And that's an interesting one, Joe, for Hanna. Looking at some of these intensity models, there are a few of them that get it up to just about Category 1 hurricane. Looks like two of the models that they look at, and some of them come darn close. And of course, then after it makes landfall, you see the rapid decrease in the winds. But the guidance is supporting what the Hurricane Center is doing with this. And I just want to take a look, just for laughs. Let's look at Gonzalo and the intensity guidance with Gonzalo. And you can see the exact opposite here. It looks like more of the models actually weaken this to a tropical depression or an open wave within the next 18 hours than the number of models that keep it as a tropical storm during the next 48 to 72 hours. So I feel pretty good about the idea that this thing is going to wind up weakening before it crosses the islands and then heads into the southeastern Caribbean.
Right, right.
All right, so
So,
let's go to
so
weather.
we talked about the tropics, and now it's time to concentrate on the tropical weather we're going to be enduring over the next several days here.
Well, let's take a look. You know what? I want to go back to the radar, and we'll move the radar up our way. There was a lot of heavy rain today in parts of South Jersey that snuck up from the south last night, and now it's finally offshore. There's still some heavy storms in just north and east of Baltimore, probably right along I-95, going through northeastern Maryland, and those are dropping southward. The showers and storms that from earlier, and we had some here, Joe. It poured. I mean, it really was lights out, heavy rain. Uh, if you go down south of me, because I never saw anything. I happened to be out driving to the west, and I ran into the northern edge of this. But it rained very heavily on the southern half of Long Island this morning into early afternoon before that area slid out. And looking up to the north and northwest, there's very little going on. The radar's quiet, and I think we're going to have a pretty much a thunderstorm-free weekend with what's underway.
I concur. I don't think we're going to have to worry about even the slightest risk of a cooling late afternoon thunderstorm. Both Saturday and Sunday look hot. I think of the 2 days, by far, the Sunday looks like the hotter of the two. I've got temperatures in the Hudson Valley, mid to upper 80s, the same for New York City. Sunday, I think just about everybody, even you'd have to be literally with your feet in the water at the beach somewhere not to get to 90 degrees. I think westerly or west southwesterly winds are going to blow on Sunday and push temperatures up into the low and mid 90s. I see Nick Cortez had number one. Thank you, Nick, for hitting super chats tonight. But he also says, what is the temperature going to be on Monday in New York City? Some people are saying 98 or 96. I personally think that on Monday, New York is going to be up near 97, and that'll be interesting if we get that high, because the record at Central Park on Monday is 98, set back in 1963.
Low-hanging fruit.
The record at JFK is the same year, 1963. They're at 97. So we'll be shooting for upper 90s, I think, on Monday.
Sounds like low-hanging fruit, though, with a non-100 degree number.
Well, 101, I think, was the record at LaGuardia Airport. That was not in 1963. I think that was for them 2005. And Newark Airport also, I think, had a record above 100 in 2005. So whatever reason, and I don't know why, let's say Central Park and JFK didn't get that high in 2005, but apparently the records from 63 still are intact, at least until up until now. So we'll see.
All right. I just wanted to give one more look at the radar. I shifted to the south as we've got some heavy storms this evening going on in parts of South Carolina and in North Carolina near the South Carolina state line. Scattered storms running around in parts of Tennessee, the lower Mississippi Valley. Nothing much of consequence going on in the Great Lakes. We've got some storms back through the Dakotas, a little bit of severe weather possible there, down into Colorado. The monsoon showers going on in the southwest, and also a little bit of activity in parts of Idaho and Montana, and also in a small patch of storms there that developed in along the on the east slopes of the Sierra Nevadas. But the rest of California and the Pacific Northwest are pretty quiet. So let's head over to what did I do with it? All right, I have to go back on this one. Hang on a second. Let's get the GFS up and see what's happening. I don't know if you looked at the European today. Did you look at the European today?
Very briefly, but is there something that there's a discontinuity, you think?
No. I'll bring it up. Hang on a second. I'm going to use. Let's use the tropical view, and I'll put the mean sea level pressure map, and we'll put the European on here. So if you look at the European, this is today's run. You can see Hanna on the upper left. That tiny little circle on the lower right is Gonzalo. And that tiny circle gets even tinier as we move into Saturday morning, while Hanna down to a 93 low just before landfall. And of course, it's inland. Oddly enough, Joe, the pressure is the 993. That needs 24-hour increments, okay?
Right.
I don't know why it has this, but by Sunday morning with the storm well inland, it's got a 987 low on the Mexican side, on the Mexico side. So that's a little strange, but maybe the European is trying to suggest that this thing really, strengthens at the last minute before it makes landfall. I don't know, but you can see that Gonzalo is gone by 48 hours. And then look on the lower right at 96 hours, you will see the western isobar of a tropical wave that is moved off the African coast. And European actually develops this as it moves toward the northern Leeward Islands and passes south of Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic later next week. And on this particular run, it moved it right over Hispaniola and Cuba. So we kept the pressures and brings it into the Florida Straits. Now, last night's run, just for comparison, last night's run was a little further to the west and actually kept the track of this over the open waters. And you'll notice it's very consistent here. Starting from Tuesday, running a little bit further to the south on last night's run, and moves right across the Caribbean as a tropical storm, a strong tropical storm, and then it becomes a hurricane as it moves into the northwest Caribbean. And you'll notice there's also a little closed low that's between Puerto Rico and Bermuda on this run too, closed surface low there. And on the run prior to that, which was Thursday afternoon's run, it took it, same thing though, but this time it took it over the northern leewards and then merged it on the Atlantic side to having it in the southeastern Bahamas by the time we get to next Sunday. I would just say that I think there's going to be something there. I think we're going to have the ice storm later next week.
And do you know the name of the ice storm?
Isaias.
That's about as unusual a storm name as we've had on the list.
Very unusual.
It must have replaced in 2014. We must have had an unusual ice storm for them to possibly retire.
I'm looking. Don't ask me what it is, but I have no idea.
I'm trying to find
Well, go back to see if you can go to
The
the
Atlantic
archive.
annual summary here. Arthur and Gonzalo. It's kind of funny
No,
to
it
see
couldn't
all
be
the different.
2014 was Hannah,
I'm doing
and
20. I'm doing 2014.
was there.
Um,
For some reason I thought the 2014 only the Hannah was the last storm in 2014.
that's if you're absolutely right. We didn't get beyond H in 2014.
And here we are on July 23rd, 24th, and we're on the eight storm Hannah.
It's crazy.
It
Well,
is.
then it must have been something in 2008. Maybe
Um,
they
well, what was the ice storm? Well, we don't know.
we don't know
Take
yet.
2008. Go back to Ivan.
Didn't
Ivan.
we work with somebody named Ivan?
Oh, we did. He's waiting for me to record.
Ah, Ike.
Ike. Oh, okay.
Ike.
Okay. Ivan was earlier. Maybe Ivan was like 2004 or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go since we were talking about the European, and then we can go back to taking a look at the long range. Hang on, I got too many satellite loops going here. Pretty soon my screen's going to freeze on me. Uh, let's see if I can get rid of this one. Yeah, let's get rid of this one. All right, hang on, folks. Everybody be patient, because I'm going to bring up another satellite loop. If I run too many loops, it's a problem. So I got to do these one at a time. But if you look on the lower right, there is a very well-defined and large tropical wave that is south of the Cabo Verde Islands, and there's another big wave right behind it. So the Cape Verde season seems to be getting underway here, and that is the wave that the Hurricane Center on their last outlook actually has upped the probability of something developing by the middle of next week to 40%. And I think you're going to see those numbers go up a little bit. Uh, uh, in the next over the weekend, you're going to see the Hurricane Center starting to edge those numbers up. But that's what the European is keying on. And one of the things that I would, look at when we look at the overall pattern, again, we bring up the upper air, is the fact that in the longer range, we're talking, we know that we've been on this, we've got this east-west ridge that runs from the Atlantic across the southern part of the United States. You can see it. You can see it here coming in off the Atlantic coast. There's another high back over near Arizona, and that high pressure extends all the way back out to west of Hawaii. And you've got this west-northwest flow that runs across the United States. We're on the edge of it, and that puts us on the edge of the heat. We dealt with that this week. But as we go through next week, there's a short wave that swings through and really doesn't do very much. Hang on, just let me get it there. So here we go, Sunday, Monday. Here comes a short wave from Monday, this upper low that drops down into the northern Great Lakes and then swings on through by the time we get to Thursday. And then there's a lagging short wave, Joe. You can see there's this upper low this is for several runs, the Europeans doing this, where it drops this short wave from Wisconsin down into Oklahoma, moving southeastward. And then, of course, on the lower right, you see the tropical system that shows up. And this was from a couple of runs ago. But if you watch this motion, you can see where the European, the short waves coming down from the north, and it would probably pick up this system if it were east of the Bahamas and turn it north and northeastward along the east coast. Again, this is all speaking in theory, and we're going back 2 runs. But I'm going to go to today's run to see, what the differences are. And of course, this trough that comes into the east that drops in, I think it should give us a bit of a break in the heat and humidity late next week. At least this better be. At least that's what it seems, and it's not going to be another "Hey Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat" routine from the weather models. Yeah, that's a pretty strong trough, that shortwave that swings on through. But you see this lagging shortwave in the Dakotas that drops southeastward, and of course your tropical system now is on today's run is southwest, moving over Cuba. So that's it right over there. And you got this trough. So, that would suggest maybe something coming up and heading toward the state of Florida. Again, all of this is speculative. It's what us weather people do. But look at this, Joe. On day 10, look where the alleyway is. It's right up along the southeast coast of the United States,
Right.
around this upper low that drops into Kentucky and Tennessee. It's pretty interesting that the Europeans been doing this now for several runs. Something I think we may have to pay attention to if we're sitting here on Monday and we're seeing that the models are still doing this.
Funneling up the eastern seaboard. And of course,
Well,
we had something like that happen actually back in 1976 with Hurricane Bell, and that was around the 9th and 10th of
of
August.
August,
Only
correct.
only the B storm at that time, and here we are up to H already.
Yeah, I can, remember looking through all of the years on the hurricane, um, looking at the past storms, and I think there was just one season where they got to the M storm, and of course that passing, you could never seem to get through the wall of 10, 11, or 12 storms in a year. Most years you had far less than that. And then since the mid 1980s, and particularly once we got into the 90s and beyond, we've seen this cyclical uptick in hurricane activity. So here's your GFS surface map. The GFS probably has a different idea with regards to anything happening in the tropics. But it doesn't look like, Joe, we're going to have any kind of thunderstorm activity of consequence here until maybe late Tuesday with a weather
Late
front
Tuesday,
coming
Tuesday
through.
night. Yeah, yeah. And it's not, it's going to take that front, which may bring us a bit of relief, and especially in terms of the humidity. It's not going to be a very rapid mover. So it's going to be approaching on Tuesday. It'll probably set off a few storms late Tuesday or Tuesday night. By the way, SPC, I read their 4 to 8 day discussion, and they said, yeah, it looks kind of interesting for some activity mid-Atlantic area about late Tuesday or Tuesday night and next week, but not quite enough to warrant any kind of. But maybe we'll add something in the days to come. Stay tuned. So the showers and scattered thunderstorms, maybe later Tuesday and Tuesday night, lingering perhaps into early Wednesday, maybe, as the front will be moving on through Wednesday, and then hopefully we'll be able to ever so slowly and dry things out during Wednesday and set the stage for some decent weather here, decent for Thursday and Friday. It does not look like it's going to be one of those wonderfully cool, dry airflows, but when you have just endured, let's say, 95, 98, 97 degrees Sunday and Monday, and maybe even Tuesday, and you drop it back to the upper 80s, that's a nice push of temperatures downward. And the humidity, the dew point temperatures, no, I don't think they're going to drop out of the 60s. But when you're hovering near 70 and you can drop them back to the mid and low 60s,
It'll
that too,
it,
relatively
it'll feel
speaking,
better.
is good.
By the way, I'm looking at the GFS in comparison to the European. That L that you see on the lower right is the tropical wave that's moved that's south of the Cabo Verde Islands, but it does nothing with it. The GFS does absolutely nothing with this as it moves westward. So the European, on the other hand, is got something obviously much more developed. I want to just take a look at the Canadian. I haven't looked at the Canadian model in a long time, and they had an upgrade done. So of course, the old story was the fact of how the hurricane used to make all these Category 5 hurricanes all over the place. Out of curiosity, I want to see if the Canadian does anything with this tropical wave, and it really doesn't. And it just shows lower pressures down in the tropical Atlantic and in the Caribbean, but it really doesn't do anything either. So the European, for now, seems to stand alone. We could look at the icon just for laughs. I mean, we're already almost at an hour, so why not look at the icon? And the icon has it, by the way. The icon has, well, let's see what the icon has before I speak too soon. So the L that's there now is, of course, on the windwards, is Gonzalo. There's your low west of the Cabo Verdes, moves along to the west, and the icon does actually do something with this, and it brings it toward the northern Leeward Islands by next Wednesday. And I'll go back one run because that goes a little bit further beyond 120 hours. And there it is on the icon, on the old icon, and it moves it over the northern Leeward Islands and has it moving right over Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic as a minimal hurricane. So I think the takeaway is that the icon and the Europeans certainly are supportive of the idea of another tropical storm of some kind starting around the middle part of next week. But we got to get there first before
Right.
we start talking about what might or might not happen down the road. So I'm back full screen. I don't know if we got any questions on the board.
I'm looking. I don't know if I haven't. I don't know if whether or not I just completely lost. It looks like I completely lost whatever he may have sent. I'm talking about the chairman, Scott Briller, and whether or not he sent me a question or not. If he did, I don't see anything. Do you have anything for me, Joe? Or
I do. I have a couple of things. Um,
wait a minute, hold it. Do I have? I think I may have something here. Um, no, it was not. No, I haven't got anything from Scott. Scott Briller was making a comment about something that Lee Goldberg said yesterday, but that was the last time I got anything from him.
Manual 349 says I can imagine sometime in November we'll be using the Greek letters like we did in 2005. Well, I would just look. We're ahead of 2005's pace by a good 9 days. And the activity in 2005 was virtually nonstop from the beginning of August until the early part of October. I think there was a short period in there of about maybe a couple of days where we didn't have a named storm running around. But just be advised that just because the pattern is as active as it is now doesn't necessarily mean we're going to hold the same pattern as we move through August and September. Have been years that you get a few storms early, and then for whatever reason, it just kind of shuts down to an extent, even going into the peak part of the season. So there's no guarantees here, but you certainly have past performance supportive of the idea that we're going to have a long and busy season. And Bill Huber, yeah, I did. I just saw your post now. I did put up the wide satellite loop, so we looked at that wave that was off the African coast. So let me get to what I have for you. I have to find it also. Dan Kirby just about Hanna whether the rains will make it into the southwestern part of the U.S. No, I don't think so. I think that the system moves southwest into the mountains of Mexico and never really lifts up. In fact, the actual low center on the models almost makes it to the Pacific coast before it just kind of gets absorbed. So I would say this. I would say no. Although there have been instances of systems that have come into Texas, and you can follow an identifiable feature westward into New Mexico and Arizona. That happens every once in a while. All right. So let me. I'm amazed. I haven't had, knock on wood. I fixed my internet yesterday, so 1970, by the way, Corpus Christi. Scott had sent me an article from the Caller Times, which was the paper there. The last hurricane was Hurricane Celia, was in 1970. Okay, I was close. I knew it was somewhere near 1970. So I'm going to put that link on the chat board for anyone who is interested.
Is it Celia or Cecilia?
No, Celia.
Celia.
Okay, I just had the link. Oh, I can't put the link off of Facebook like that. Hold on. I just forgot. Let's try it again. Copy. Where are we? Link. Well, this link might be too long. But it was 1970. Yeah, it's not going to take it. It's way too long. So I can't.
Well, you know what you could do, Joe, if you really want to show it, go to tinyurl.com
There's one other way. Hang on. I'm going to try to do it this way. No, it's not going to let me. Let me get the questions up, and then while you're contemplating them, I can try and fix that. All right. So let's start with a question that I had. Okay, it's low. Here we go. This was a question that was supposed to be for Bill Goodman, and for those of you who didn't catch it earlier, you can go ahead and watch it. I did a live stream at noon today with Bill Goodman. We talked about hurricane season in general. We even talked about the upcoming winter. So if you missed it, just go to the library on my YouTube channel, and you can see the earlier YouTube of myself and Bill Goodman. So how many named tropical systems in the world did we have in 2005, and how many major hurricanes that were above Cat 3?
So we're talking worldwide here for
Okay,
2005.
yeah, Scott, that number's got to be wrong because unless you're talking about just in the Atlantic. He's got the numbers, I think, here for the Atlantic. But he said in the question, the tropical systems in the world. How many named tropical systems in the world? But the numbers he gave me for the answer, 28 named and 7 major, that's got to be just for the Atlantic.
It has to be.
So,
we
so I don't know if he mistakenly put world or he meant to put Atlantic. So anyway, so much for that question. We'll come back. So let's.
And what does he get for that? The consolation prize, something from the Michael C. Fina Company.
Or from the Spiegel Catalog Company. Spiegel, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. All right, we got our 6. Didn't get out of the 70s today, by the way. Okay, here we go. This is for Thursday, which I don't think we got to. The highest temperature ever recorded in Nantucket.
Oh dear. Well, actually, with a good hard west wind, I'm sure that they have seen 100 degrees at least once in the period of record keeping. So I'm gonna say, I'll say 100.
92.
92. That's all they ever got to is 92.
That's what he said.
Wow.
What was the lowest temperature ever on Nantucket?
Well, I'll say I was going to say sub-zero, but I'll say +1.
0. So that's 0. Close.
Okay.
Okay. How many traffic lights are there on the island of Nantucket?
Nantucket. What is this with Nantucket all of a sudden?
I don't know.
Traffic lights? It's a relatively small island of 5.
Actually, the same as the lowest temperature there. Goose egg. None.
None?
There are no traffic lights on Nantucket.
They don't have any traffic lights on Nantucket.
Nope.
Wow.
And what was Nantucket's biggest snowfall?
Well, they're like Cape Cod. They stick out, where they jut out, and they can get hammered, whereas an inland location gets hardly anything. I'll say 16 inches.
21.4.
21 point, and I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. They had the path of a total eclipse of the sun passed over Nantucket in March of 1970. Normally, if you want to go to Nantucket in the month of March, you have no problems. You catch the ferry from Woods Hole, and you're pretty much all by yourself. And yet they had to have the standing room only sign that particular day, because people from Woods Hole, people were crowding in trying to get on the ferry so they can see that eclipse was not total at Martha's Vineyard and Cape Cod. You had to go to Nantucket to see the full eclipse, and people, I think, were waiting online the night before, trying to get on board that ferry. So,
all right, I tiny URL'd that link to the article from Hurricane Celia. It's on the chat board for those of you who are interested. So go ahead and take a look. And I think we can wrap it up tonight. So
By the way,
tomorrow,
that's a great, for those of you who have never seen this before, tinyurl.com. And if you have a situation where you want to send somebody a link, but the link, the URL is like, and they're
500
all
miles long.
three or 400 characters long or whatever like that, just copy it, go to the tiny URL link, put it in there, press the button, and it knocks it down to like no more than, let's say, 20 or 25 characters. It's
Yeah,
wonderful.
it took mine was 383 and shortened it to 28,
Wow.
which is good. All right, so that's all taken care of. So tomorrow, how about we try to do something maybe around midday, just as Hannah's making landfall, maybe?
Well, we could try. I did the lawn today, most of it. Now tomorrow I have to do the edging, and I told my wife, I said I'll do it in the morning. So if I get up early, get on out there, I can usually do the edging in about an hour or so, or hour and a half, and hopefully by about noontime I'll be done, and then we could do something.
All right, I'll message you in the morning, and we can play it by ear. So, folks, just look for a notification, or if you're on Patreon, you'll get a notification from me when I post the link of a live stream tomorrow. And of course, if that doesn't come to pass, then we will certainly be here Sunday morning, and we can see what's going on with Hurricane Douglas. So we could cover Hannah tomorrow. We'll have Hannah and Gonzalo, whatever's left of that, and Sunday morning we can do a coverage on Hurricane Douglas.
Douglas Edwards, CBS.
CBS News. All right, folks.
Not to be confused with Sister Charles Edwards.
That's right, Sister God. God bless. God rest her soul before you get there.
Yeah.
Along with
And
Mrs. Quinn.
or Mrs. Oh, please.
But Mrs. Quinn may have gone in the other direction.
The hybrid, the cross between
The Hydra?
she was a combination of Elvira Gulch, the woman on the bicycle.
Elvira Gulch. Just
right.
Because you own half the county doesn't mean you have the power to run the rest of us. For 23 years, I've been dying to tell you what I thought of you. And well, now being a Christian woman, I can't say it.
Mrs. Quinn was half of that and half of Beatrice Arthur's beloved character Maud. If you can imagine, Elvira Gulch and Maud and meld them together into one person, that was Mrs. Quinn.
A sarcastic woman who hates dogs.
Yes.
All right, Joe. We'll see you tomorrow.
And your mangy little dog,
too.
And
your little dog, too. All right. See you tomorrow. And, folks, we'll see you tomorrow.